What if I told you the most powerful mafia families in America never fired a gun, they held a pen? That the real families behind the modern underworld wore $1,000 suits, traded stocks instead of bullets, and laundered billions through the same banks that control your mortgage. Welcome to Wall Street and the Godfathers, the story of how organized crime went corporate. Stay until the end, because what you'll hear will change how you see every dollar in your pocket. And if you think crime is only in the streets, think again. It's sitting at the head of the boardroom table. The year is 1987. The stock market crashes. While Wall Street burns, the mob is quietly celebrating. Because behind every financial collapse, someone is cashing in. The mob had always known one thing. Fear controls people, but money controls the world. So as the FBI chased drug dealers through alleyways, the smartest men in the underworld, the godfathers of finance, found a new weapon, the American financial system itself. Let's rewind. New York, 1970s. The five families, Gambino, Genovese, Lucchese, Colombo, Bonanno, are kings of the streets. But by the end of the decade, things start changing. Drugs are messy. Murders attract heat. The next generation of mobsters, the ones raised on both violence and Wall Street, realize something. Why sell heroin on the corner when you can wash the profits in a Manhattan skyscraper? They start sending their kids to college, business degrees, finance majors, even Harvard MBAs. Money laundering turns into money management. And by the time the FBI figures it out, the mafia isn't just in the streets anymore. It's sitting in the banks, the stock exchanges, and the real estate firms of America. One of the first major schemes was simple, but genius. Using shell companies in the Caribbean, mob-owned firms bought shares of American businesses, then sold them back to American investors, tax-free. The profits were clean, the trail impossible to trace. It wasn't a gunfight. It was a spreadsheet war. But the mob didn't stop there. They began using Wall Street brokers, men who looked like angels but worked like devils, to pump up fake stocks, sell them to retirees, and disappear before anyone noticed. It was the birth of what the FBI would later call the white-collar mafia. By the 1990s, this game had gone global. Russian oligarchs, Italian bosses, and American bankers, all part of the same silent syndicate. They moved billions through offshore accounts, construction projects, and consulting firms that never did a day of work. And the banks? They didn't care where the money came from, as long as it kept flowing. One FBI agent later said, "Every major bank in New York has handled mob money at one point or another. Some did it knowingly, some didn't want to know." Let's talk about the faces behind it. Michael Francesi, a Colombo family captain, once dubbed the Yumpy Don. He made $5 to $10 million a week through gasoline tax scams and Wall Street deals. He was charming, educated, and ruthless. He looked more like a CEO than a gangster, and that was the point. Or consider Salvatore Sami the Bull, who claimed that by the late 80s, real estate and union investments brought in more money than drug sales. The mafia had evolved. The streets were just small time. The real power was now in contracts, stocks, and loans. By the early 2000s, Wall Street itself had become the perfect laundromat. Credit default swaps, offshore holdings, special purpose vehicles, all complex enough to confuse even the regulators. And behind those layers of paper, dirty money from narcotics, arms trafficking, and political bribes. The irony, when the 2008 financial crisis hit, billions of those laundered dollars kept the system afloat. The mob had built the shadow economy, and when the legitimate one collapsed, their cash saved it. Here's the truth the public doesn't want to face. Organized crime didn't vanish. It just changed suits. The Godfather became the CFO. The hitmen became hedge fund managers. And the rackets? They're now called consulting. Every skyscraper in Manhattan hides secrets. Offshore trusts, shell corporations, political payoffs. And behind it all, The same philosophy that ran the Mafia for a century. Control the flow of money, and you control the people who depend on it. Let's take one recent example. In 2020, investigators uncovered billions laundered through luxury real estate in Miami, New York, and London. Yachts, condos, private jets, all paid for with investment funds tied to criminal networks. Who facilitated it? Banks that were fined but never shut down. Lawyers who drafted the papers and walked away untouched. Accountants who didn't ask questions. It's the same old story, but this time, the crime wears a silk tie and carries a business card. And yet, justice rarely catches up, because when power and money merge, the system protects itself. The courtroom becomes a theater. The guilty buy time, and the real criminals, the financial godfathers, walk free. Even today, anonymous shell companies in Delaware and Nevada hide billions. Crypto exchanges and offshore banks move funds faster than ever before. And somewhere, in a penthouse overlooking Manhattan, a new kind of mob boss is quietly counting profits, not in cash, but in digital code. The mob isn't gone. It's modernized. It doesn't need to shoot anyone anymore. It owns the bullets, the banks, and the government contracts.